So, hello everybody. I'm Joel Whitaker, and today we have with us Joe Beatrice, who is the head of Barrell Spirits, which has been making quite an impression lately. And I sort of wondered, who is this guy? Where did he come from? How did he get involved with alcohol? And then I discovered he was an internet guy, which makes me even more interested, going from bits and bytes to alcohol. And so I thought we'd call him up and ask him who he is. So, hello, Joe. Who are you? Where did you come from? And how did you get into alcohol? But what's this thing about Blue Dingle Digital?
Morning. Okay. So I started this company, Barrell Spirits. This is our 10th year anniversary. We just opened up our new facility in Jeffersontown, which is essentially is Louisville, in Louisville. So this is our new space, this is our conference room, I'm really happy to be with you here. So we're going back to Blue Dingo. So I grew up in Boston and spent most of my adult life in New York. I started an ad agency and then quickly got into the internet. It was 1989 or so when we started that business. And along the way, we had a pretty large footprint in different industries. So Blue Dingo was a digital company that did engagements, consulting and implementation engagements for large brands and various businesses. Along the way, we had a spirits vertical. And so in the late 80s, the first time I came to Kentucky was, I think it was 1989, 1990, somewhere there. And I fell in love with Kentucky. It was a beautiful state, and we had some clients here, and it took me 20 years or so to get back a little bit more, but we started a business here, and we live here now full time. So we did web application development, online advertising, large scale data integration, built social media platforms. It was a pretty diverse entity, and it evolved with whatever was happening at the time in the industry, which changed rapidly. It was a golden age of when everything was possible. It was a really fun period of time.
Yep. So now you've got yourself over here at Blue Run Spirits, and you just opened a new facility, as you said. Tell me a little bit about that facility before we get into really talking about your entrepreneurial story. I mean, how you got bitten by the bug and all that. But tell us about your new facility. How how's it different from the old facility, and you know all that.
Okay. So our operations have always been in Kentucky, and we were doing co-packing, which was contract bottling, and was doing blending in a couple of different facilities. And about 4 years in or so into that, we got our first space, and that was it was an old Cricket wireless data bunker, and we took it over, turned the server room into our bottling area, put it in large blending tanks, a couple of 5,000 gallon blending tanks in there, and we operated out of there. We actually still have that place. About 3 years ago, we knew we needed to expand, so we spent a period of time looking. So just 2 years ago, we bought this facility, which is it's about 5 miles from the other place. And this was it's essentially it was a clean slate. It was a box 31,000 square foot facility that we gutted and then designed a purpose-built design to reflect the way we work here. So what we have here are 8 different bottling tanks with about a 64,000 gallon capacity. And we have 2 bottling lines that we have upgraded significantly to, that will push about 1 million cases in one shift through this facility. and everything is designed for maximum flow of efficiency. So, we've learned from all the work we've been doing, how we want to operate, and we integrated that and designed around it. So I'm sitting in the conference room, which leads to a speakeasy. And then we have one lab here. We're going to put another one upstairs in the other side of the building. And that's where we do all of our blending. We do blending in there, which is where what we do is we create, we're blenders. So we do not distill anything, or we distill very little. But what our main function is to create new products out of barrels that we have acquired over the years. And so in our lab, we'll do hundreds of different test blends to get the profile just right. And once we get that profile right, we will then bring those barrels in here and then put into our blending tanks, and then they get piped into the bottling area. So essentially, that's a pretty simplistic look at what we do. Along the way, a year ago, we had the opportunity to buy a rick house, a historic rick house was built in the 40s. In Shively, which is on the other side of town. So we bought 10 acres and a really amazing old rick house that has the original ricks made out of the oak at the time, which was dense like iron, and it's a spectacular old building, and that holds about 18,000 barrels. So we have barrels all over the country. We've been consolidating slowly into different regions, and then we keep what we need here available so that we can bring them in just in time as we need them in this space.
Okay, good. So walk me through your decision to get involved with alcohol. What led you to that decision? Were you
Well,
bored? Were you
yeah,
bored with digital, or did you just sort of stumble across it, or why did you why did you do it?
that's a good question. Well, I had, there were a couple of things going on. One, I knew a bit about how the spirits business work, how the spirits marketing works, and I also had a really good palate. And the truth is that I just couldn't write another PowerPoint presentation. I think that was it. I think I hit the limit on the number of PowerPoints that you can write in life, and I needed to do something different. And the story is that I tell is it's really true, because so much in this business or people make stuff up. It's part of the lore of spirits, but this actually happens to be true. My wife Jan and I were living in New York, and we went and visited a distillery, and it was just this chance thing with something to do on a Saturday. And I had this moment. It was similar to what happened when I figured out that the internet was where I wanted to be. I had this almost epiphany, and it was like, I like to do this. I think we can do this. It blends a lot of things to get blends. See, blends. It ties together a lot of things that I've done in my career, and it thought it might be really fun to do it. And so I started with the concept of we need to build a distillery, and that took about 1 week to figure out that we don't want to build a distillery. I want to build a brand.
So what made you decide you didn't want to build a distillery, but rather just build a brand?
There are one, it's a factory. Essentially, a distillery is a factory.
Right.
And to be a good factory, you need to make a consistent product. And the elements that go into making that consistent product, especially in spirits, is there are far more moving parts than people realize. You can have a problem with yeast, a problem with fermentation, a problem with distillation process, anything. And it was that combined with it's a very capital intensive business, and you don't really know how it turns out for 5 years. I mean, you monitor on the way, obviously, but you're really not using the product for 4 or 5 years out. And so those things together really just, push it out of something that I wanted to do. I wanted to do something more immediate. I saw the opportunity in the market when I was out there, and it took 1 year to pull together the positioning, the differentiation, the product concept, acquiring the initial barrels, and then getting everything, the entity set up, and navigating all of the federal and state regulatory agencies, which are stunningly complex and Byzantine. And and then 1 year, almost to the day, we bottled our first batch. And then a month later, I opened the first 100 accounts personally, and now we're in 10,000 accounts 10 years later.
Good. And
So a lot happened in between, but it's pretty much in a
yeah,
nutshell.
well, we're going to ask you what happened in between. So you opened the first 100 accounts, and you opened them personally. So how hard was that? I mean, you were out there knocking on doors, so to speak. So how hard was that?
Well, the first day was in freezing cold January, and I went to the hardest accounts I could think of. The first one was, I always loved this. It was Park Ave Liquors in New York and Manhattan, and went in, had an appointment, talked to them, and they bought 5 cases, and I was like, "Whoa, this is going to be easy." Yeah, okay. That was it. That was the easy one. Then everything else was hard. So it is a really interesting experience, and so I'm going to answer this question, but I'm going to layer in a little bit about what makes us a little bit different. So part of our differentiation was that everything that we produced up to now has been cast strength. And that was just not the case. When we started, there were a handful of cast strength products, and there were special releases generally. Now there are a lot of people doing cast strength products. We also did unique products. So we have a blend now of unique products that are limited time and limited release, and also some that are more ongoing that we have over time that we maintain. And then the third one was that was three, and there were 3 points of differentiation. And so the other thing about the whole distribution and getting into this business was the contemporary wisdom was you went into on-trade, which is restaurants and bars, and then you got your product in there, people tried it, they go to the liquor store and buy it. To me, that didn't seem right, because the amount of time and energy and actual real sale you get from selling on premise for a brand that you're trying to break into a restaurant or bar is way more than doing it off premise. So, and I knew that from all the research we did, all the testing, we have a pretty deep relationship with at the time with bloggers, social media critics, and we still do. And we put our product out there for people to try. And if they like it, great. If they don't, great. But we generally get very positive feedback. And so I knew that when we put the product in people's mouth, they liked it. So focusing on tastings and whiskey events and on-premise was the strategy that we used, and it's paid off. And so we've done over the years thousands of events and thousands of tastings where we interact with people and let them try it. So that became that process became really that became our path, which is a little bit different than the way that the spirits are marketed and distributed in the country. It's always changing, but that wasn't the footprint, the model when we started, but that was our path, and it really has paid off.
That excuse me, that sounds really smart to me, to do tastings and so on, and let the potential customer experience your product, versus handing it to some guy whose role essentially is to be a gatekeeper and say no, and it really does. And that way also you get a fast reaction from your ultimate consumer. So, I think
we got a lot of feedback. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right.
Did you get any comments about your packaging as you were doing this process?
Yeah, that was the packaging was I knew that it was really going to be our calling card. I knew that this was really going to represent the brand. And so the first thing that happened was I actually started with the glass, with bottles. And so I looked at hundreds of different bottles, and this bottle, our bottle, to me is such elegant and beautiful proportions, and the hand feel on it, it feels really good in your hand. It just, you can hold it. It's you can pour, it's heavy. Everything about it just spoke to me. And so then we actually designed around the package, and what we wanted to do was, I did a little bit of, we did a couple focus groups, but ones that I just ran, with different labels and position. And this was the optimal label position because we're all about transparency. And I'll explain that in a second. And so I wanted to really express that in the bottle. So you can really see the liquid is the hero here in the shape. And so the other thing that was going on at the time and was that it's a very different whiskey market now than it was 10 years ago. We are what's called an NDP, a non-distilling producer. And that means that we buy barrels, either whether it's new or whether it's aged from different producers. And our value added in what we do is we're blenders. So we've spent our careers playing with different barrels and literally thousands of barrels and combinations, and knowing the mash bills, the char of the barrels, the different kind of wood, the states that it was matured in the age, and we know the profiles, and we put these together. So we were really transparent about that. I mean, it was the spirit. I think I mentioned earlier, the spirits business is full of legends and sort of mythology around a brand, which doesn't always necessarily intersect with truth. And so my focus, I want to differentiate by saying, this is what we do. This is not a long lost recipe. We're not reviving a brand that existed 200 years ago, 100 years ago. We're a new entity, a new company, and we have a new approach to it. And this is our package, and this is what we do. And it resonated with people. In fact, a really funny story. Somebody asked me at one point, is it even legal to do that, to buy barrels from other companies? And my answer was, I had to like contain myself, but the answer is, well, pretty much, 10 years ago and 15 years ago, every drop of bourbon was made by about 10 producers in the country. And there were 1,000 brands, so 500 brands. So yeah, it's okay. You can do that.
Yeah, that it is legal. No question
It is
about
legal.
it. So you're in what, 10,000 locations now?
Yep.
In how many states?
We're in 49. We don't have a presence in Hawaii yet. It's just a logistics problem. But we're in 49 states at this point.
So you got
countries.
You got nationwide distribution.
Yes.
Good. What's your marketing plan from here on?
Well, for our expansion is there's always more accounts that you can go into. And then there's always working through increasing the volume in the different accounts. We do have a small presence in Australia, and we're just in Canada, a small presence in Canada. It's we're just executing a relationship in the UK now and South Korea, but they're small. I mean, they're small and they build, and it's the friction of the market that is the limiting factor in a lot of things. And something people don't realize, the United States has a federal level of regulation, but there's also a state level, and every state is different. We're essentially distributing to 50 different countries. When you look at the fabric of the United States, it's crazy. There are some states that are controlled, that are government state franchise, and there are some that are open. Some have very complex rules on what you can do for pricing, and some you can do whatever you want. It is, and navigating that is really it's tricky, and it takes a lot of work on the compliance side to do that. But it's a part of this business that on the surface it sounds really simple, and you're doing at some level, you're putting alcohol in a bottle in a box and it goes to somebody to drink, but it's not quite that simple on any level.
Yeah, you got to have a good lawyer by your side, that's for sure, to deal with
team.
all the regulations. No question about it. Are you happy with how are you distributing it? And by that, I mean, are you using one distributor or are you
No,
using a whole bunch of distributors? What's your plan?
yeah,
How are you
yeah,
doing it?
yeah, that's a really good question. It is, we have developed a network of distributors across the country, some large, some medium. We're using some distributors in multiple states. But we grew that organically to reflect the kind of distribution partner that we needed, which was, there was a minimum threshold. They had to have enough capital to be able to buy inventory, and they had to have enough people to be able to interact with the market. And also their sales team had to be the kind that was okay with not selling an 80 proof vodka that was, there's a big difference between selling 80 proof vodka on a price deal that gets stacked on the floor and they go in and they put a slap of card and says $9.99 special, to what we do, which is an elevated whiskey experience that goes. Our products range from $79.99 to $500. The bulk of them being under $100. And we're actually introducing a new product in a couple weeks at the $55 price point. So we're really excited about that. It's a 100 proof 5-year-old product. And that, not to get off on that, but that's to bring people into our brand who, that $90 for a bottle of whiskey is, it's a lot. It's a lot for me to pay. It's a lot for everybody to pay. So we're asking people to make a big leap. And so we're giving people a lower price entry point to come in and really experience our product. And we've been able to do this now. We've been working on this for a couple of years. So we've been able to get the right product and blend for it. But anyway, back to the distributor. And so in some cases, we work with large distributors in a couple of markets. And what we've done is we've put together what we think is the network of distribution that really works for our brand. And that's time consuming, challenging, and to find the right partners. And and there were some things that I know this may be a surprise to you, but there are things in this country called franchise states, which are different from controlled states and different from open states. But essentially, when you sign up with a distributor, you're married for life. There is no divorce there. You are, so you got to choose wisely. And there you can sometimes co-distribute in the state. You can, sometimes you can buy out the distributor, or a distributor will swap brands with them. But for the most part, it's a very interesting business concept that is not frankly a good one, but that's how it is. We have a few states we have to do that.
Yeah, I'll tell you, the distributors like it.
Sure.
You know. Um, so you're growing, obviously. How about people? Do you have enough people? Are you looking to hire additional people? If so, how many and when and in what areas?
We have been slowly growing and adding people, as we grow. And we have I think we're just under 60 people at this point. Some based here in Louisville, a lot of remote people. Sales are all obviously remote. And we have a team of what we call operators that do the bottling and other work. So when you think of a bottling line person, I really wanted to make this very different. I didn't want somebody to be standing in front of a machine doing the same repetitive task over and over and over again. It's not fulfilling. It's not healthy for anybody. And so we have a team of people, the operators, that all can run any part of the machinery. They swap roles all the time. Some will do packing, some will do bottles, some will do whatever it is, run the equipment. But they also they might spend a couple of days out at our rick house moving around barrels. So they get to do different tasks all the time. Depending upon what the needs are of the business at the time is what they'll do. So and then we have virtually zero turnover in that area, where in any sort of manufacturing role, there's a lot of turnover. You get bored and tired, and we try to make this a great environment to work in. For me, building the culture is not the first company built. Building the company culture is really important. You want people to want to be there and be dedicated and have fun. And we do a lot of stuff with everybody here. And we just did our opening, and it was so much fun because everybody except for some salespeople that were in the market was here and interacted with people. We had the operators doing tours. We had our single barrel person, in the speakeasy, and everybody just had a lot of fun at this event. It was
Well,
pretty. It
that's
was.
great. I have to say to you though that Henry Ford would not approve of the way you're operating there at all.
That's right.
For
And you can
anyone who
have.
does, yeah, for anyone who does not know, Henry Ford's the guy who invented the moving assembly line, and he had people stand in one position, do the same thing every day, and no change. So, you know, he would not approve, but I think it's probably a very, very wise idea. How do you bring somebody and you hire somebody, obviously, and you obviously interview them, oh, I know all that stuff, but their first day on the job, can you describe that to me?
Uh, It's a good question. Well, they'll be thrown right into things here. Well, first of all, our interview process is not, we spend a lot of time interviewing people. I would rather spend the time finding the right people in any role than to have somebody who's not happy or have to be replaced. So the day one is not really a surprise. They know what they're getting into. They've met. I virtually meet everybody. There's before we hire them, and even if it's not in person, it's through Zoom. And it's also having the experience of hiring hundreds of people over the years. I feel like I have an innate feel for who will work and who won't work. But I let everybody who are doing the hiring make the decisions, and so they come here and they'll be, we have a we've spent a lot of time and energy getting our HR systems right, which is one of the more complex parts of running a business, and that's changed so dramatically over the last 20 years. It's crazy. And so they have a good feel for what the expectations are, what they're expected to do. They know they've already met the people that they're working with and for, so they come right in and join in. And the culture is there's nothing overt. There's no indoctrination. We don't have mission statements with sayings all over the walls of, it's not like Animal Farm. It's pretty low key, but there is an expectation of excellence and performance here. And that's a very rewarding thing. People don't want to disappoint anybody. And the biggest point of contention of anything, and this is probably a great example of what I'm talking about, is this thing, the strip seal. So this used to be a tax stamp, which was bottles used to have this on there to prove that taxes were paid. It's not relevant anymore, but they looked like this. And so for me, the design has to line up perfectly. There's an exactness to what we do in our blending and to every aspect of our production and our product and what it is. And so that's a very hard thing to get straight with bottling equipment. And because there's a tolerance and limitation in manufacturing. And so we had to touch most bottles we have 3 other bottling lines in our old facility. We're phasing out as we move in here and do our production. And so, some very high percentage of these bottles had to be touched by hand if adjusted. So getting the new equipment right, the operations people that work here spent a full year working with the manufacturer in Europe and here to get it right, so that the tolerance level exceeded what their standard was. And so now we have less than 1% failure on that. But the understanding, but even now, I went out there before this, just grabbed this, I wanted to show you the bottle. They were out there double checking and making sure that it was lined up, and so that less than 1% was pulled out, and they'd adjust. But this really is, I think that's really sort of a microcosm of how things work here, because that we will not put that bottle in the box if it doesn't line up. We will not put that liquid in the box if it doesn't taste good. We'll blend it until we get it right, and everybody here understands that.
Good. So we're almost out of time, uh, which means I don't want to hold you up and keep from getting things that'll make you money. Uh, are, are there any questions that I've not asked you that you wish I had?
That's a good one. Well, we've covered a lot. It's what's interesting to me is the dynamics of this business and how it changes all the time. Historically, there's a continual evolution of what spirits are, what people like, what people taste people have. There's Booker Noe has this great quote from, I want to say 1990 maybe. It may have been as late as no, it may have been as late as 2000, where they stopped production because there was bourbon was being produced, and the sales weren't. It was not, the demand of bourbon was not where it is today, and he just shut down. He said, when you're ready and you drink it, we'll make more. And you think about that now, where you have company after company after company coming online with building production capacity of over 100,000 barrels a year, is mind-boggling. The amount of barrels produced and the production is crazy. So it's really an interesting dynamic, did Mad Men actually contribute to the rise of the term I don't like, the brown goods spirits, the whiskeys and bourbons? I think so. I think that had a lot to do with the same way James Bond killed the brown spirits with the martini in the 60s. Well, that combined with nobody wanted to drink what their parents drank, but I think those two things factor in there. But the historically is, perspective is really interesting. The fact that we're blenders and that blending is a high art form, which it always was in Scotland in the merchant whiskey business. That's how it works. It was a dirty word here. I mean, it was a blended whiskey was grain neutral spirits, vodka and some whiskey thrown in and blended, and pretty much anything your grandfather drank was a blended whiskey, but now it's a total different. It's an art form, and it's and we've been really fortunate to lead the way and develop hundreds of new products and blends, and we're enjoying it. We're having fun. It's all good. I asked everything, I think.
Great. So I have two more questions for you. I'll tell you in advance what they are.
Okay.
What if you were telling somebody about the business, and what would you say is the biggest lesson you've learned positively? Best thing you've had happen, and conversely, what is the thing that you wish you'd never had the experience of having happen since you started Barrel Craft Spirits?
The first one is really, it's easy. It is this historically, spirits business is a very friendly business, very people business. Make friends with everybody and ask questions, and it was surprising how generous people were with their time over the years when we were developing this, and helping out. It would be, call somebody and say, how does this work? What's wrong with my label that it didn't get approved? What am I missing here? How do you make sure that the stopper fits the bottle? So it doesn't leak. All these things, these hundreds and thousands of details that you never think of. There's no manual. You have to learn it, or have somebody help you guide through it. So I think the first thing is really to make friends. The second one is harder. I think I think the most difficult ground to navigate is the compliance and the distribution side. It really is. So, the lessons to take from that are choose wisely on your distributor. And it's harder and harder because it is a buyer's market from a distributor, and the distributor is our customer. We sell to them, they sell to the retail. It's a three-tier system. It's a throwback. It's a post-prohibition thing, and it's difficult. As a supplier, you don't have direct access to the market, although our sales force does interact, excuse me, with consumers. But choosing wisely there, and making sure that you get the right group, and the last thing I would say, and this is just sort of the way I live my life, is don't sign anything unless you've read it. It sounds obvious, but read your contract and get legal advice on your contracts. We keep the legal profession in business here.
Yeah, that's very good advice too. No question about it. Well, Joe, Beatrice, thank you so much for your time. Good luck in the next 10 years. I hope that your
Thank you.
business proceeds to grow as effectively and as well as it has in the first 10. And we'll look forward to talking to you again sometime. So
Anytime.
congratulations and good luck.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a great day and bye-bye, everybody.